and the American people should never have to pay for that lie. Ms. DeVito, in your testimony, you talk about so-called failures of DOGE in your opinion. But do you support the federal government funding HHS and NIH studies that promote the genital mutilation of children? Do you support forcing Americans to pay for genital mutilation of children? Yes or no, Ms. DeVito?
Thank you for your question. I think we all agree that the government should work for people.
No, I asked you, do you support genital mutilation of children and the American people having to pay for it? That's a yes or no question.
I think government research is responsible for all sorts of innovations that we enjoy
So you do,
today.
so for the record, you do support the American people paying for top and bottom surgeries of children.
I think
All right, you just saw the clip. And whether you like Marjorie Taylor Greene or not, one thing is undeniable. She did not mince words. And she did not back down. This video is raw. It's uncomfortable. It's confrontational. And honestly, that's exactly why it matters. Because for years, Washington has hidden behind vague language, bureaucratic jargon, and studies that most Americans never even hear about, let alone consent to paying for. What MTG did here was rip the curtain back and force a conversation the political class desperately tries to avoid. This wasn't about tone policing. This wasn't about feelings. This was about where your tax dollars are going, and whether the American people ever approved of it. Now, before we dive deep, make sure you hit like, subscribe to Capital Clarity, and turn on notifications. We break down Washington without the spin, without the fog, and without fear.
Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questions. The DOGE website details much of the wasteful spending and it hits the brakes on, and it has an incredible list of top hits. Some of the spending is not just embarrassing, but it is funding actually the genital mutilation of our children, forcing the American taxpayers to pay for it. A $620,000 HHS grant for hashtag Transcendent Health, adapting an LGBT plus inclusive teen prevention program for transgender boys. $620,000 from HHS. It's absurd. This is disgusting, and it facilitates a lie. Here's another one. A $2,000 NIH grant for cross-sex steroid therapy and cardiovascular risk in transgender females. This is another absurd grant that was handed out. A $120,000 NIH grant for personalized 3D avatar tool development for measurement of body perception across gender identities. Here's another absurd grant that, again, tells the lie that there's more than two genders. There's only two, male and female. That's it. Something else that the American people should know about, these radical extremist judges that are playing politics from the bench, a judge ruled that this has to be protected. This is a HHS program for gender-affirming care in young people. Again, the only thing that affirms gender is the fact that there's only two sexes, male and female, and the American people should never have to pay for that lie. Ms. DeVito, in your testimony, you talk about so-called failures of DOGE in your opinion. But do you support the federal government funding HHS and NIH studies that promote the genital mutilation of children? Do you support forcing Americans to pay for genital mutilation of children? Yes or no, Ms. DeVito?
Thank you for your question. I think we all agree that the government should work for people.
No, I asked you, do you support genital mutilation of children and the American people having to pay for it? That's a yes or no question.
I think government research is responsible for all sorts of innovations that we enjoy
So you do,
today.
so for the record, you do support the American people paying for top and bottom surgeries of children.
I think
cutting off the breast of young girls, teenage girls, and castrating teenage boys. You support the American people paying for that.
I think government research is incredibly important.
That's not
for
research,
overall
Ms.
innovation.
DeVito. That's mutilating kids' bodies before they're old enough to vote, before they're old enough to join the military, before they're old enough to even be adults. That's what you're saying the American people should pay for. Just so you know, Ms. DeVito, and I'm very proud to announce that I have a bill called Protect Children's Innocence Act that will criminalize sex changes on children, and that bill will see a vote on the House floor, and I look forward to my Republican colleagues and hopefully Democrats that come to their senses voting yes for that bill, because it's absolutely repulsive and disgusting, and America voted against that this past election. Sick. Mr. Dickerson, how do we implement cuts in appropriations moving forward to prevent these agencies from ever being able to fund these studies that promote the mutilation of children's bodies ever again?
I think what you need to do is ensure those riders are included in the appropriations bills that are passed, to clarify to the agencies that even though they have never actually received authorization for these, so they shouldn't have actually done it in the first place, but if they need that funding rider to restrict American taxpayer funds for going to those terribly divisive and harmful things.
Yeah, permanently, right?
Exactly.
Thank you. Other egregious abuses of funds, a $10 million Department of Education grant to the Virginia Commonwealth University for faculty workshops on decolonizing the curriculum, a nearly $700,000 National Science Foundation grant to the University of Tennessee for Black and Latinx parents leading reform and advancing racial justice in elementary mathematics, a project that could provide a model for other communities and schools seeking to advance racial justice in mathematics and education. This is insane, absurd, and it's racist in itself. Math is math. A $500,000 EPA grant, Green Jobs, growing a new generation of environmental justice problem solvers. All of this stuff is far left ideology, and the American people should not be paying for it. It looks like my time's up, so with that, I'll yield to the ranking member, Stansbury, for 5.
Now that we've watched the full exchange, let's talk honestly. What Marjorie Taylor Greene did here was something you rarely see in Congress anymore. She asked direct questions, and she refused to accept evasive answers. And that alone already sets her apart. She cited specific grants, specific dollar amounts, specific agencies. This wasn't vague outrage. This was documented spending. And the core issue she raised is simple but explosive. Should the federal government be funding research and programs that involve medical interventions on minors related to gender transition? You can dodge the phrasing all you want, but that's the question. MTG didn't let the witness hide behind buzzwords like innovation, research, or health outcomes. She boiled it down to what taxpayers actually understand. Are Americans being forced to pay for procedures involving children, yes or no? And notice something important. The witness never gave a clean answer. Instead, we heard general defenses of government research, which is telling. Because when something is truly defensible, you don't have to redefine it, you can explain it plainly. Marjorie Taylor Greene also directly challenged the ideological foundation behind these grants. She rejected the idea that gender is limitless, and she made a biological argument that resonates with millions of Americans who feel gaslit by institutions that insist math, biology, and reality are all suddenly subjective. And here's what critics will miss or intentionally ignore. This wasn't just about one issue. This was about accountability. She connected the dots between unelected bureaucrats, activist judges, and federal agencies operating without explicit authorization from Congress. That's not culture war rhetoric, that's a constitutional concern. When she announced the Protect Children's Innocence Act, it wasn't performative. It was legislative. She wasn't just ranting, she was signaling a vote, a bill, and a clear policy direction. Love her or hate her, that's what representation looks like. Taking a position and putting your name on it. And then she expanded the scope. She pointed out other federal grants tied to ideological projects, racialized math curricula, decolonization workshops, environmental justice activism, and asked a question many Americans are asking at their kitchen tables. Why is the federal government funding ideological experiments instead of focusing on core responsibilities? You may agree with those programs. You may disagree. But pretending this conversation shouldn't happen is exactly how trust in government collapses. MTG's style is aggressive, no doubt. But aggressive doesn't mean inaccurate. This hearing showed a deep disconnect between Washington insiders and everyday Americans. One side speaks in abstractions. The other speaks in moral absolutes. And whether you think she went too far or not, Marjorie Taylor Greene did something rare. She made the issue impossible to ignore. That's not chaos. That's clarity. And that's exactly what Capital Clarity exists to bring you. If you value honest breakdowns, real accountability, and uncensored reactions from Capitol Hill, subscribe, like, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Because the conversation doesn't end in that hearing room. It starts with us.